Hey, this is Freewave, also known as the scientist on Rate Your Music, genre nerd, blogger, chroniclister, and music historian. I am doing another video today as part of a series of just short videos sort of thrown together about the Rate Your Music box set project, which I had and have my hands deep and been running for about 12 years, obviously. And one of the things I've been working on just in the last weeks, months, is doing sort of a more in-depth thing with the J-core genres. I am a huge fan of Japanese music, and they do things a little bit differently, and I like some of the commonality of the music in terms of being bright, colorful, and even the hardcore elements of J-core are generally brighter, and whether you call it kawaii or whether you just have it chiptune elements sometimes in there, a whole lot of cool sampling, full of energy. It really brings out the brightness of the hardcore spectrum out there, and I really love it. And there's certain things that J-core does better than certain reasons to be into it. One of them is it's really a community approach. I mean, there's so many compilations coming out, various artist compilations, albums, that come out that are constantly spread out where, you know, you have the whole spectrum of J-core artists all showing up, putting out a track, and they work on different labels, but you know, they bounce back and forth from different labels. They use different aliases sometimes. One of the big thing is most artists generally make quite a few different genres instead of necessarily specializing only in one genre, although some do. The artwork has a commonality of the anime style and a real sort of fun nature to it. And it sort of ties in with the doujin community. You see a lot of, in the back in the day, you'd see a lot of blogs and Discord servers for it, and that was really cool. But that's part of why I really like J-core. And then there's a lot of DJs out there that spend a lot of time putting out mixes for it on YouTube, and then also make some of the local conventions and stuff like that. So J-core is one thing that I've been into for a while, but sort of am putting a new spin on. One of the things I put out just recently, and this is, I guess it's July 21st, so almost a full month ago, was a Japanese high-tech. Now, it's Japanese high-tech full-on, which that sort of throws everyone. If you actually look at high-tech psytrance, it's really fast, crazy fast, more like 180 BPM to 200 BPM. So it fits more with sort of a psycore. So when you saw the Japanese calling theirs high tech, and it's only 145 to 150, you're like, whoa, wait a sec, this is not like psytrance high tech at all, and it's not. And it's because it was originally called Japanese high tech full on, and it mixes heavy drum lines and bass such as dubstep, electro, and complextro, very busy, very complicated, and around the 140 to 155. So this is something we'd been talking about before, and it took forever for us to figure out why they were calling it high tech, because it seemed like they were basing it somewhat around it, but then it's completely different. And did a deep dive, took a look at it, and finally figured out some of these connections here, and other people did on the server, and really figuring out that it had a lot more with sort of psytrance and not necessarily high-tech psytrance, and then mixing in dubstep, electro, and complextro. Anyway, so we made the set here, and like always, we go and we sort of, it's chronological style, so we start, USAO is really a huge figurehead in this and has done so much stuff. Might not be as well known as a lot of people, but between hardstyle and a lot of other genres, really stands out at the pack and has done a lot of the stuff first. And then you've got Lapix, Camelia's done a lot, Homarju, Endorphin, Graham, who is also DJ Genki, a lot of aliases in J-core. Again, Chameleon, stuff like that. And so we have all that. We go over sources. We always go over sources because you got to pull the information from places. You got to say where they came from. I like to use a lot of quotes myself. Remy Wiki is fantastic for going over Japanese artists. Specifically, this is sort of the beat gaming and stuff like that, but they cover a lot of J-Core as part of that. Cold Kiss Sound, shout out to them, is one of the channels that has done the good job of saying, hey, this is a high-tech release, this is a high-tech release, this is a high-tech release, and really made this set possible. And so there's a lot of this. And we finally came across a Camellia and a Lapix high-tech interview where they talk about it, and that's how we really figured out where the naming came in, because it wasn't making any sense to this. And then we've got a couple mixes here. And they actually was an ultra high-tech series, which really helped make this a name in Japan. So there's, I think, is it a 4-part series? Let me see if I wrote that. I don't know. I'm sort of blazing back here. Yeah, they did 4 releases. So really, if you check out any of those compilations, you will see that those are going to be releases of new material of Japanese high-tech. Anyway, and then Chorus K actually did a bunch of this stuff. This was an old video that was calling it high-tech full-on, so they were a good name on there. So, and then there's, there's some, this here is actually Western high-tech psytrance done by a Japanese artist. So if you want to see what high-tech you would normally expect to in the psytrance things to sound like, that's it. I guess there is actually a high-tech full-on that is out there that is based on what the Japanese were trying to do. I haven't come across that, to be honest, so it was something that really fell off the radar here and we had to pick up. So going back up, so this whole thing, this is just one section of what we've done for J-Core. And this is something that I recently updated in May. Gave it a new YouTube, gave it a Spotify, made this to 2 discs. So this is made so that you'd have 2 discs of really knowing the history of J-Core. Of course, starting with DJ Sharpnell's really where it comes in. Before this, it was nerdcore techno. Everything before J-Core is kind of a nerdcore techno before it goes into hardcore, where it's techno and drum and bass, but not nearly getting as intense into the hardcore spectrum. So they came in the hardcore quite a bit late. And everything sort of in the 90s and early 2000s, you have more as nerdcore techno, which is sort of dealing with the fandom within Japan. So, and then you've got, and as part of this, again, I consider sort of J-Core an umbrella thing, where, some people say it's a genre, and maybe that should be limited to the happy hardcore, UK hardcore style. But I think that's incredibly limiting if you say, okay, all J-Core has to be the happy hardcore, UK hardcore style versus Gabber, hardstyle, speedcore, Frenchcore, and everything else that really fits under the umbrella of Japanese hardcore. Some people make the distinction. I consider J-Core really covering all of that there. And so this recent set, which I updated here, really goes through, added a whole bunch of new artists that weren't on the first one. And then there's still some artists that I likely could add if we ever made this a 3-disc. But one thing I started doing recently, I think this year, is breaking down some of the subgenre sets. So you could get something like Japanese Speedcore. Really go over what Japan has done for Speedcore and how there is a sub-community within J-Core that really works outside of the standard things. So you've got Cabario, Roundwave Crusher, J.J. Carrara, Loisel Gabbers, and all these artists that Camellia that really exist outside of that. And you've even got some labels like Psycho Filth Records is definitely huge on the Speedcore side and doesn't do as much stuff in the other side of the J-Core spectrum. And so besides just covering the artists that do these, also covering the labels that specialize in it, including sources. I don't see a Japanese speedcore mixes, which I have in here, which I normally try to do. I don't know if I'm going to drop the ball there, if I just didn't see too many that I thought fit. Japanese Makina is one. Makina is a Spanish form of bouncing techno, which really took off in Japan, thanks to M Project, DJ Depeth, DJ Technium. I hope I'm pronouncing these right, but really took off with M Project and a bunch of artists that work with him on the Japanese Makina side. It's very similar to UK hardcore, the happy hardcore sound, but it's different. It's Makina, and it's a little bit different. So what I am doing now, and hopefully will be upcoming sets this month, is I'm trying to make some subsets for Japanese happy hardcore, which would include UK hardcore as it advanced. A lot of the time when people see people voting, they don't necessarily specialize. And UK hardcore just got added to Rate Your Music only recently. So there's still a lot of people just adding votes for the very, very first time there. Japanese Gabber, which is going to include both regular Gabber and the new style Gabber. It gets very hard on the voting to say which one you're really voting for. When new style Gabber came out, it was a slower BPM that differentiated itself in the 90s from the older Gabber, which was much more faster. And then shortly after that, it started speeding it up again, and you find Gabber more around the 180 beats per minute, sometimes around the 200 beats per minute. But, so new style Gabber is generally talking about, historically has talked about the slower speed of Gabber, but these days really can include what you call modern hardcore, or just hardcore itself, where it's the pounding 4/4 techno sound. So that's going to include Gabber here. Frenchcore is something that Japan has done, really sort of track by track, but coming across a little bit more recently. Let me pull up. This is in draft form. But if you take a look at some of the Dust Vox, Frenchcore stick out being the first full release that is definitely only Frenchcore, all Japanese artists, and is a who's who of who's making Japanese Frenchcore. And then a lot of releases. Freakin' Sounds does a lot. Obviously, I talked about Dust Vox. USAO, again, has been leading the way on this. But really taking a look at a couple of the key early tracks. Again, Rate Your Music, the box sets, I go chronological. And with a lot of these, you might only have just a handful of tracks on here. But if you're looking for Japanese Frenchcore, these are the compilations you're going to check for. And it might only be 2 or 3 tracks on there, but this is where you're going to actually find them. And then Japanese hardstyle is something I'm going to do. So we got 4 upcoming sets that we're going to do. And I'm going to try to cover Japanese breakcore, is something that we've done this year. And then we've also done things like Japanese freeform, pumpcore, which kind of a high energy version of hard tech. I haven't covered Japanese hard tech because then it gets hard to, which is Japanese hard tech and which is Japanese pumpcore and which is Frenchcore. I don't know if I really want to get that in depth to it. And then you got some artists that really specialize that. Funkot, you got artcore, and then futurecore, which makes even things even a little bit more complicated, taking some of the future bass and throwing it in there. So one of the things I've been doing recently is sort of building up and doing some other lists for this. Is one of them, like, we'll pull up DJ Sharpnel here. And if you look on the side, you are going to see ones that anytime you've got an artist listed, not necessarily an album, but an artist on the list, you're going to see them on the left side on here. And Undead Warrior, I got to admit, helped me back in the day with talking about J-Core, and was one of the only people talking about J-Core, and helped sort of get the very first list out. So a huge thanks to him. But J-Core mixes and streams. This is something I kicked off recently, but then this breaks down on the particular artist. So if you got Camellia on here, And this is going to link to particular mixes done by Camellia or featuring Camellia work. And then one other thing, yeah, over in the chat box here, move the YouTube DJ mixes over to my blog. This is pulling up all the J-Core YouTube mixes and streams, and these are the ones on YouTube. I initially did these as embeds on the thing and then realized they weren't going to ever come up or be visible, and that was just frankly too much stuff. So if you take a look under here, you can find all these links. So if you want to go to DJ Nux, actually I'm going to, because, DJ Curated Rever actually hit me up on one of the Discords and said, thank you for doing this. So I'm going to give him a little highlight. Him, her, I don't know. You never know with J-Core and all the female avatars. But if you take a look at that, hey, here's the J-Core mix. This particular one probably a little bit more of a happy hardcore style. And then if we're in luck, you've got a track list of all the different artists that are on here. Yay! Get smarter like music. So anyway, so all the J-Core mixes by artists. DJ Kuro has their own Discord that I joined, that I actually got to talk briefly with some of these people on here and got to show them what I was working on. So these are some really cool J-Core mixes that you can find direct links to, and you should probably follow if you like J-Core. Obviously, I'm talking about some very niche. But if you're a J-Core fan, you're like, holy shit, this is awesome. I wish people would talk more about J-Core and the different genres and how to get into that and where to find stuff and yada, yada, yada. And that's why I do what I do. So, and then one other thing I am also doing, let's see if this is going to work. I think it will. Let's see. Let's take something. If you go under a release on here, see, there are two. Okay, so if you look under here, you're going to find, okay, Japanese high-tech full-on. So the one, if you're looking for Japanese high-tech full-on, this will tell you what single track is on there. And I'm not seeing the other list I was actually looking for. Here we go, J-Core and Japanese hardcore on Spotify. This is another list I made recently. I'm probably going to have to update many times over time. But linking which, especially of the various artist albums, compilations, are out on Spotify. You will find these ones that are highlighted on Rate Your Music. These ones are actually on Spotify. And back in the day, if you checked Spotify maybe even a year ago, you probably wouldn't see a lot of these. So this has gotten better and better over time. More and more Japanese hardcore artists making it on the Spotify. And then hopefully, this helps you find those albums. And then, again, any of the lists I do, so if I put out a Japanese hardstyle list, it's going to be on Spotify. So if you want to hear some Japanese hardstyle, you can find it on Spotify or on YouTube. Search for it and you will find it. Again, if you do the RYM box set, Japanese hardstyle, RIM box set. You got to spell it right, because I'm a terrible typist, as people on my Discord know. Japanese hardstyle. And even if it's not a set that's fully out yet, I'm going to have probably some sort of draft playlist out there. And then you can find some related stuff. Again, if you want to find Japanese New Wave or Japanese New Age or Enka or something like that, if you put Rim Box Set with it, you're probably going to find some related subgenres, because we try to keep playlists on YouTube and on Spotify on here. And as long as you search for it, you're going to find it. So, again, I hope you really like the project. I am on a J-Core kick. And while I don't want it to end anytime soon, I'd like to complete these sets and get that portion done with, and then maybe get some feedback from the community. If you're on a Discord, or if you see this and you're like, okay, I like what you did here, but not this track and not this track, and where's this guy, and how come you have this, and how come you don't have this, I'm more than happy to get your feedback on there, because I just do my best and mainly listen to other mixes out there. There's plenty of sources out there that say, hey, these are all the releases that have a Frenchcore track on them, and then you have to figure out which ones are noteworthy and which track it is and who artist did it and how this all interrelates. And so it's tricky. It is really tricky. So, but this is what I'm doing for J-Core. And again, this is what I kind of do for a whole lot of genres. But right now, J-Core is going to be the thing that I'm going to be pumping out this month. And I hope you check it out. And I hope you like it. Again, like, subscribe, comment. All that stuff is important because that way I know that people are actually watching these videos and you're enjoying them and it's worth doing. So I hope you like, and I'll keep doing more of these. Thanks.